Awesome. We're recording.
Awesome, man.
Third time lucky.
Third time lucky. Yeah.
Heck, man. So you were to blame first time. We were off to, but I've been following Instagram. Looked pretty awesome. Yeah. What was the go there? Friday you were out.
Yeah. We went tar hunting down south.
Lovely.
Yeah. Ballot block in the Landsborough.
Oh, that's a classic. What is it like for you heading into a classic place like the Landsborough?
That was huge because, that's obviously massive iconic hunting area that I haven't been into, for all the hunting I have done and written for magazines and, done everything I've done in hunting. I haven't really done much of that sort of iconic South Island alpine style hunting, and I've never shot a tar at all. So it was a huge trip, and it panned out really well too. We had an awesome hunt. I shot my first bull tar. Mate shot a massive bull tar, and the weather was awesome. We had a great block. We got dropped off up at about 900 meters, so we were above the bush line.
Awesome.
Just surrounded by bloody rock and ice and snow, and yeah, it was just awesome, eh?
Fantastic. And you mentioned something there, sitting above the bush line. I've just spent the last, I guess it took 5 minutes to watch Adam Greentree. He's just doing it off his own back. I think he's trying to highlight New Zealand hunting, and he's also highlighting how if you're doing it on your own, it can be a pretty shit time if you, like I say, don't jump in a whirly bird and get up above there. He's been two days trying to get through the bush. How good was it being above?
Oh yeah, and I follow Adam Greentree, and I've listened to podcasts that he's been in that, and actually talking about hunting in the Landsborough, and sounds like he was doing it all on foot from the road end, and that's hard going, man. It's serious country, and he seems to be like a hardcore dude, eh? Like he's not sort of mucking around and doing the easy hunts, which is pretty awesome. But we were pretty well catered for, man. Obviously it's a public land hunt, ballot block, but it was two of us in a Jet Ranger, and we were maxed out, so we had about 400 kilos of gear. So we're both, I'm 6'5" and 107 kilos, and my mate was about 6'6" and about 100 kilos, but we had that extra 200 kilos of gear. We had one of those MIA tents, the big canvas wall tent with a fireplace in it. We didn't take truckloads of food. We didn't go crazy on the food or booze or anything. We just were well catered for with the big tent, plenty of warm clothes and all of that. And just to get dropped off with all your gear for a week, already up high, and to be up there fresh, ready to go, without having slogged your guts out for a couple of days, was pretty awesome, man. It really was, eh?
No, that's pretty cool. You see plenty of the guys, start up high and try drop down low and immediately regret it. And that's what I talked about with Matt Gibson, is the fact that when we did the Blue River, we were down in the river valley going, oh, should we go up there? And it just would have been great to be chucked up on top of the saddle and explore around the tops and see chamois and tar, probably not any tar, but chamois and deer around the edge of the Aspiring National Park. Mate, did you get the hurry up to go do the tar hunt, or this had always been a long-term plan?
Oh, always been a long-term plan, yeah. And shooting a mature bull tar in the winter with the big mane and all of that is one of the last like real big bucket list items that I had for hunting in New Zealand, other than just hunting the way I've always hunted and just doing heaps more over the dogs and all of that. I always hunt, but there was one thing that was really nagging at me, was to just get it done and get out of the way, was bull tar in the winter with the full mane and all of that,
Yeah, so what sort of makes that special for you? Is it, you've done a bit of riding, you say, is it just sort of the exposure that you see from the likes of the guys in Canterbury or in West Coast, or is it something that it's been going back further?
It's just I can't really, put a finger on exactly why. It's just something that's bull tar. It's just something that's captivated me, and you can go and do it in the spring, and it may be a bit easier, and they come down a bit lower, and the weather's a lot better, and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And now that I've got the winter bull tar ticked off, then I can go and do that and enjoy it too, But there was just something about it. It was just a personal thing. It just sort of captivated me. Mature bull tar in the winter, cold as hell, and it's it's just epic. Yeah.
I guess while we're on that, what was the key bit of kit that you had out there apart from a quality canvas tent and a fireplace? Did you have that too?
Yeah, we did, man. We did. We had a fireplace, and part of the gear that we took in, and why we didn't take insane amounts of flying food. We actually took in quite a few dehydrated meals, we took in a bit of kindling and some fire bricks and stuff to keep the fire cranking. So that tent was a huge key bit of kit. You can obviously do it without it, and people have for years, but huge difference, man, being able to come back and actually sit up in a tent with the fire going and dry off and stuff like that, than get back and crawl into a little dome tent or a pup tent, like a week up there, and those conditions would be very difficult like that. But a key bit of gear, there's a few, man. Obviously really good warm clothes. But if I had to narrow it down, probably a key bit of kit for us was an ice axe. Yeah, first time for me using an ice axe. And we actually had this adjustable one. So you could, instead of it being a shorter ice axe that you were just using in the real steep stuff and for chopping steps and that, it was actually a walking stick too. You could extend it out so it was quite long, but it still had the spike on the bottom like an ice axe. And that was invaluable. We used it a lot. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And I suppose, like you said, the two of you weren't little fellas, so both being able to lie down and lounge out, and then also adjust the height of an ice axe. You've mentioned two little hacks that you guys have stumbled across. Yeah.
I mean, none of those, an ice axe or the wall tent, it's not a secret, But and especially those wall tents are real popular now, and so are ice axes. But having it extendable and just using it like a walking stick and having it long enough, and it really does save a lot of energy and makes you feel a lot safer. Because it was some bloody steep country. Just having that third leg, Yeah.
It's definitely invaluable. My mate and I did Timaru Creek, and we took the ridgeline once, and mate, I was just, like you say, that third leg, especially when you're sidling and stuff like that, it just makes all the difference. You can leave the gun in a comfortable position or above, if that's the way you're inclined, and just really focus on looking around, and feel a lot more steady up there, especially, are we in the sort of shingly stuff?
Not so much shingle, but a lot of just that tussocky stuff. And because I'm a flatlander from the North Island, so I'm used to the Uaweras and Kaimanawas and Kaimais and things. And you look at that tussock and you see it in videos and in photos and all of that, and you just imagine this lovely golden tussock that's sort of halfway up your thighs and halfway up your calves, and you're just like wandering through these fields. But you get in that stuff, and a lot of it that looks like tussock from a distance, but you actually get over there and it's sort of waist deep, and there's trees and I don't know what you call that stuff, sort of just above, not full on monkey scrub, but you know what I mean. And when the snow's on it, the snow's actually not just on hard ground, it's actually over, the snow's sitting up on a metre or 1,200 mil high layer of trees and branches and crap, and you're trying to walk on it, and you're not just falling through onto the ground through, you break through 6 inches of snow, or there's a meter hole under that down through branches and shit, you know. So the ice axe is great for that, stabbing around and feeling for the holes and heaps of stuff, and not even in the ice, you know, how useful the ice axe was when you're not even on snow. You're just on the dirt and in that tussock and in those trees and stuff, stabbing around and leaning on it, and that it was bloody, yeah.
Yeah, I was not sure what it was that I was reading. It might have been the Call of the Wapiti book that I just finished, but that was one of the things they were talking about, that actually the tussocks that high that you might spook some of the satellite deer if you're honing yourself in on a stag or something across the valley. They'll be hiding amongst the tussocks.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Nice, man. So last night we tried to do this, and unfortunately my plans changed, and my wee daughter decided that that wasn't to be. But you were scooting around on a motorbike. Is it an electronic thing?
On the e-bike, yeah.
Yeah, tell us a bit about what's going on there, mate, because it looks pretty interesting. You see a few of them around the dairy farms now, but what's your version?
Yeah. Oh, so that's it's a Suron, and I got it from Lowentech Limited. Lowentech, if they're on Instagram. And I used to ride dirt bikes like motocross and freestyle motocross and stuff like that. And I was around at a friend of mine's place, Nick Franklin. I don't know if that name means anything. He was one of New Zealand's best freestyle motocross riders, and he's got a big freestyle compound over by Tokoroa, where Jed Milden, have you heard of Jed?
No, another new name.
Yeah, so he rides BMX and Nitro Circus and stuff. He was the first person on the planet, I think, to do triple flips and stuff like that. And he spends a lot of time at Nick's place, and they've got all these jumps and foam pits and huge roll and all stuff. And I went around there, and Jed had one of those Surons, the e-bikes, and he's ripping all these dirt jumps on them and stuff. And another guy had one, and he just said straight away, have a ride on it. And I had a ride on it, and I was just hooked straight away. It was super cool. Really, really cool. It's sort of like set up like a full-on downhill mountain bike, you know. So it's not sort of this thing that you're going to just hop on and trundle around behind the cows or, you know, shoot down to the shop. You can do all that, and you just flick it into eco mode, and it just cruises, and anyone can ride it. It's super user friendly. But then you can chuck it in sport mode too, and it's it's actually a serious bit of kit. You can hit big jumps and flip them and do whatever you want on them. So I wanted one as soon as I saw them, and then the opportunity came up to grab one, so I grabbed one, and I've just been riding it around Papamoa, and awesome for running the dogs. Real cool for that. Yeah.
Where did the adrenaline sort of start? When did you do all this freestyle motocross?
I mean, I started riding, you know, BMX and farm bikes like right when I was a kid, you know, but never had proper motocross bikes and all. It was just sort of thrashing the farm bikes at home and wrecking those. I had a couple of shitty bikes as a kid. I had an old KDX 200, but was never fully kitted out and taken to race days and stuff like that. And it was just bashing crap bikes around on the farm with maybe a helmet if you were lucky, you know. But it wasn't until I sort of started working, and I was about 19, working at the freezing works, and had a bit of money, and brought a KX 250 and just started riding. Just started mucking around with it, and it just sort of escalated, going from riding trail rides and stuff to motocross tracks to, and then there's actually probably watching like Krusty Demons. Mm-hmm. You know, did you ever see those, the old Krusty Demon DVDs?
Yeah.
Full on freestyle motocross. Was always interested in it, and I can't remember. I was actually another guy I was riding with. He was right into it. He wasn't that good, but he was right into the whole scene and knew quite a few people. And then he sussed out a spot to go hit a ramp. one day, and then we went and did that, and then it just sort of snowballed until I was writing shows and wrote a few shows and a few competitions and got okay at it, but I was never really, really good,
Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
So are you the type of person, like you look there now at your studio, it's awesome setup, and like I say, you saw the bike and you just needed the new one, the Ciron, you just needed to get into it. Are you sort of one of those people that if something tickles your fancy, you start to go all in, or
Yeah.
do you've got too many broad interests to do that?
No, I'm definitely, it's a combination of both. And it's a pain in the ass because I do go all in on stuff, big time, but then I get bored quick too. And new things grab my eye and I want to go all in on those. I'm generally not that good at dabbling and stuff. I'm slowly getting better and better and learning too, but particularly like through my teens and 20s, I just can't dabble with stuff, and it just pisses me off. And I just want to be going all in.
Yeah. So talk us through what sort of farm did you grow up on, and how did you end up at the freezing works?
Oh yeah. So I grew up on a tiny little dairy farm. It was like 75 acres and 75 cows.
Yeah.
That backed on to the Kaimai Ranges, and I grew up there. I left school when I was 14, so I left school pretty early and worked for my dad for a bit, and then left there and did a few other farming jobs. I was just farming for my dad, and my dad also had a sawmill. Mm-hmm. So I worked in the sawmill and on the farm. And I left there, did a few farm jobs around the place, and I think I was doing like a part-time farm job. It was full-time, but it was like a casual, short-term farm job for my uncle, and a job came up at the freezing works. And because I grew up and went to school in Te Araha, and in Te Araha, like the freezing works was a good job. Like if you got a job at the freezing works, like you cracked it, man. Like as crazy as that, like it sounds crazy to me now. There's nothing wrong with working at the freezing works, but small town, and it wasn't. It wasn't like flooding with major aspirations, So I was like, and I was always hunting, and I knew how to cut stuff up. I knew how to sharpen knives and stuff like that. Like, any growing up on a farm, so any sort of farm job, or that type of manual labor stuff was always going to be pretty easy for me to get into. Yeah, so I just applied for the job and got it, and that's it. Worked there for like 3 years.
Yeah, what sort of roles did you end up there, man?
I ended up pretty much the whole 3 years I was cheeking out, so boning the cheek meat off the head.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was at cattle works, was it?
Yeah, beef.
Yeah. Nice. And so where did the trapping and going full time into hunting and writing about it, where did all that sort of stuff start up?
The trapping. So my dad trapped possums a little bit growing up. So I think I was definitely involved in trapping my first possum when I was about 5 years old, Mm-hmm. And then dabbled with it growing up, trapping a few possums, and did a lot of shooting possums, spotlighting and stuff. And when I was about 15, probably in that period between finishing working for my dad and then starting at the freezing works, I had a period there where I was sort of doing relief milking and bits and pieces. And I did a bit of possum trapping through that period. And then if we fast forward about 10 years, I was actually working at a quarry, and I'd done trapping earlier, so I knew how to do it, and I knew sort of the situations with the possums and the kaimais and how many were there, and we were hunting at the same time, so we were out on the ground, and we used to see possum sign and think, man, there's a lot of possums around, no one's really doing it, and the fur price just kept climbing and climbing. When I first started doing it, when I was, probably 12 or 13, And the guy first started coming around saying, oh, you can just pluck the fur now and we'll buy the fur off you. It was $30 a kilo. And then when I was doing it quite a bit, when I was probably about 15, when I was relief walking, it was about $50 a kilo. And we could make a bit of money doing it then, and then, but as you get older, you get a little bit smarter and you get a little bit more industrious too. And you think, man, if we had more traps than what we had, we could have been getting more. Then the price got to $100 a kilo, and I just knew, that I could make more money doing that than what I could basically anywhere else at the time, considering my options. So yeah, I basically left my job at the quarry and just started trapping.
And so how did you then make it work? Was it just acres and acres of time in the bush, covering lots of land, or obviously there's massive strategy to what you're looking for and where you're going to set up, but what made it worth your while?
So I started trapping on bush edge or the Kaimais, which is definitely the best trapping in the Kaimais. The Kaimais does hold decent numbers of possums, but the interior doesn't hold super high numbers compared to some other areas. It's just the way the bush is. And it's a lot to do with the geology too, what the ground's like and how damp or rocky it is. But the bush edge is good, man. The bush edge is really good. And I basically, so I grew up on Old Te Araha Road, which is the road that runs from Te Araha through to the main road that goes over the Kaimais to Tauranga from Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of my stomping ground growing up, and knew that whole road. And when I first started, I drove along. I spent a couple of days just driving up and down that road, calling in at all the farmers, asking them if I could trap possums, and just got as many as I could sewing up. And then it was just trapping the bush edge, man, on an old CT 200. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was it. About 100 traps, and just cruise up and just set them and just go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so during the day, what are you doing? Just collecting things up, plucking them, bagging them, getting them sold. Is that right?
Yep. So a trap line would generally, a good trap line will run anywhere up to a couple of weeks, maybe from a week to 2 weeks. If it's really good, about 2 weeks is a good time frame. And I'd basically turn up. When I was working off the bike, I could set a whole line in one day, because I'd run 100 traps. About 60 traps is a good load on your back. That's sort of 60 traps with bait and water and lunch and all that stuff is I don't know what it'd probably be, at least 30 kilos. Mm-hmm. So I'd take that. I could set 100 traps in a day. That's a big day too. So I'd set the traps that day, and then you come back the next day and pluck, and you're just smacking possums on the head. And I'd actually gather them up. So I'd, instead of killing one possum, resetting the trap, and then stopping, opening my fur bag, plucking, I'd actually come along, kill the possum, reset the trap, rebait, and walk, and just hurry along the trap line and gather up 4 or 5 at a time. Mm-hmm. And when I was trapping bush edges, as long as it wasn't a hot top wire, which most of it wasn't, it was like 7-wire batten, I'd actually pluck. I'd never sat down to pluck. I'd always pluck standing up, and I'd always pluck with the possum hanging over something. So the possum would go over the top wire, and I'm just plucking standing up with my bag right next to me, just throwing it straight in the bag. And I could pluck 5 or 6 at a time like that. So that's basic day, man, is 100 traps. And you just turn up at the first one and kill the possum, pick it up, and gather them up as quick as you can, and pluck them as quick as you can, and just repeat that day after day until that line isn't catching anymore. Then get them all in and move to the next farm.
Nice. And so, was it something that if you put a bunch of possum trappers in a room, would everyone end up having pretty similar technique, or is it real diverse? I don't know how social possum trapping is.
Yeah, it's probably not that social. Well, it can and it can't be, and I spent time later on living in the Uawaras, and you're living in the same hut as another trapper, and it's good. It's cool talking to other trappers, you know, and you're asking about, how's your line going, and you know, all the trapper chat. What are the possums like? What's the fur like? But it is pretty diverse. I mean, it's the same principles, you know, like getting the trap on the right tree, choosing the right tree, setting the trap right, good bedding for your trap, but then all of the little finer details. Definitely, man, different trappers have their all their different little things that they do and little tricks and that, and everyone's different for sure. And I've seen other trapper sets and looked at it, thought, what the hell's that, you know? But if they saw mine, they'd probably think the same. Mm-hmm. And different things work for different people for different reasons, eh? Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was it that kept driving the fur price up? And obviously now when you speak about Te Aroha, they've got, I know some Paeroa, they've got the big dog food plant there that's using the possum carcass now. Is it time to get back into hunting possums as a full thing again?
Probably not for me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kept driving it up. I think it really was just that working out how to use the possum fibre on its own instead of as in a skin, and then and blending it with because they have to blend the possum fur with a longer fibre so they can create a yarn. You know, and once they worked out how to get the possum fibre into a yarn, then it allows you to do everything that you can do with wool with possum fur, you know. You can knit with it and create all these different types of products with it, versus just being their old school skin type stuff, you know, like fur coats and hats and stuff. And then I guess, and it is an incredible fibre. I still use it today, you know, like I've got a possum fur merino jersey that I used down on the Landsborough trip, just because nothing's quite like it. Nothing's as warm for how light it is, and it's very nice to wear too, and it doesn't get a smell to it. And it's just awesome stuff. So I guess that's what it just created a market, you know, and it took off. And then it's just that supply and demand thing, and that's what's driven the price up and kept it up. The price is pretty good at the moment, and possums are harder to catch, man. The fur industry's had a huge impact on possum numbers in New Zealand, and you know, I think sometimes that doesn't, the fur industry and fur trappers definitely don't always get the credit that they should do for how many possums they kill, you know. And the Department of Conservation says, you know, that fur trapping doesn't have a big enough impact on possum numbers, and while it definitely doesn't get it down to the numbers that that the Department of Conservation are like, they like very low catch rates, you know, if they're doing an operation, and really, really low. But overall, you know, any possum trapper that's been going hard for the last 10 years will tell you there's a hell of a lot less possums around than what there were 10 years ago. And I guess that's keeping the price up too, you know, so they're actually getting harder to catch. Yeah.
Yeah, I know when you're speaking about $100 a kg, I know my cousin was a uni student in Christchurch, and he had plenty of traps set around the town, and I was in Auckland and had stumbled across one down the middle of Remuera Road, and he said, "Are you near bush?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Mate, get some traps. you can be an urban possum trapper and you know, support your lifestyle a little bit."
Get into it.
I should have taken him up, because trying to live in Auckland as a uni student was absolutely horrible. The reason why we stumbled across the possum in the middle of Remuera Road is because we were walking all the way back from town, and because we couldn't afford to get a taxi. So yeah, you probably had some good advice, and yeah, mate. you're in that studio. Tell us about, and it's obviously not just that studio; it's a new building. What's the deal with what you got going on there, brother?
Oh, yeah, and that's pretty cool. So I've basically been working out of home for the last 4 years, doing the whole dog training thing, and basically from when I went full time into that, and started off running the deer dog training boot camp. So I actually had people's dogs coming around to my place for 6 weeks at a time, and I had a property out in the country over by T-Rail, and one full-time staff working for me, and they're making the blueprint as well. So and doing one-on-one sessions. So sort of dogs and just working from home and video and editing, and having someone working for me too has all been running out of home for about 4 years now. And yeah, just finally got it to the stage just where I could get another building, and move all my work stuff out of home and have more room and stuff like that, Yeah, so that's it basically. So I just got this building, and it's got 2 offices in it. Vinny's set up down the bottom, and the podcast room's set up here, and I've got a big workshop too, and a bit of other space. So yeah, that's us.
Magic, mate. I wanted to talk to you about this. You, I think, timed the start of the Deer Dog Blueprint for big game indicating dogs perfectly, mate. When I was, and it might be just that I don't check Facebook enough anymore, but at the time I was seeing your videos constantly. Every other day I'd catch, Paul Michael's little snippets, little things that you should have as a dog owner. And mate, I don't even own a dog, but I've got the first month of the D Dog Blueprint for that day that I do get a dog. How do you feel about the use of social media to put out something so awesome as an online resource? How have you found it? Like, it must be challenging now to just try get some reach and try catch people. I'm still catching the odd thing from you, but mate, and I've even found it with the podcast. For a time there, you'd reach so many people, and now I think the only person that sees some of my posts is my mum. So how are you getting on with the big game indicating dogs, Deer Dog Blueprint, and all that?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few things there. Yeah, I mean, social media and the internet's been huge for us. And you sort of spoke about timing, and I think we did. I think the timing was very good, and we hit it hard too, and a lot has changed in the last 3 years, and the algorithms have changed a lot. Ad pricing has changed a lot too, like what we used to get out of an ad, the reach and all that we used to get out of an ad, and even just organic reach has changed a lot in that time. But all in all, the social media has been huge. I spoke about it before, that I was writing for hunting magazines. I wrote for NZ Hunter pretty full time for about 5 years. I must have, 3 or 4 or 5 in that time, but was in most of them for about 5 years, writing about all sorts of things. But a big part of what I wrote about was dog training, and just the whole thing. It just happened organically on its own, really, and it was sort of a byproduct of a lot of other things. But it was really it just made sense to do it, and I had the spare time, and me and you have spoken about Elliot Hulse, and I was just, a bit before that, a year or so before I started Big Game Indicating Dogs, I just got right into YouTube, and I think Elliot Hulse was one of the first dudes that I started watching, and that led me to all these other people. But Elliot sort of talked about his journey of, starting an online niche, and he gave me a couple of other names that I looked into, and what YouTube's like, and they start suggesting other videos and things like that. And if you're watching one video on one thing, a suggestion comes up on the side, and you just end up all over the place. And I just went down that whole rabbit hole of, choosing something and putting information out there and helping other people to do the thing that you love to do and that you've worked out how to do well. And I just sort of stumbled into all of that. I actually started watching Elliot Holst through fixing a back injury that I had. But so he was talking about that and strength and conditioning, but also on the side he was talking about all this other stuff, you know. And while I was doing that, I'd already been hunting all my life and interested in training dogs that whole time. I'd already been writing for a hunting magazine for a few years, and then also sort of coincidentally, I ended up possum trapping started getting harder and harder, and it wasn't necessarily because that was all I wanted to do, but the next sort of best viable option for me at the time was to do some contract goat control work, which was full-time hunting over indicating dogs. And then I just trained this other dog, and I needed something else to write about. So I wrote a series about how I trained her. And that was a system that I'd sort of been putting together over a number of years for myself. And then sort of halfway through that series, we started getting real short on goat work, and I needed something to do. And I've been watching Elliot, and I was doing all this stuff, and I was writing in the magazine, and I just threw a website together and put an ad in on one of my articles. And it was just happened to be good timing that I was writing a series of articles about training a deer dog anyway, and it just sort of started from there. And first off, I was just advertising in the magazine, you know, which worked okay. And then I made my first website myself for like $150, and it was pretty crappy. And I got a guy, my accountant actually put me on. He said, "Oh, you should get this guy to help you with your website." And I rang him up, and he showed me about Facebook ads. He did some work to my website, got our SEO pretty good. And he showed me about Facebook ads, and I started doing that, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've just sown the seed of where I found about you, and I was reading NZ Hunter. Yeah, I am obsessed with dogs. And it follows through in my daughter as well. She's obsessed with dogs. I think I was a dog for the first 3 years of my life, but yeah, I remember reading your articles and thinking, shit, this is cool. And I was pretty new to hunting. I was still just trying to get knowledge from anywhere. And at that point, all it was NZ Hunter. And yeah, you were putting across this awesome way of being a little bit more successful, getting into the right areas, and obviously having a dog, which I thought was all pretty cool. And yeah, I saw your ad, and I think that's how I got onto your Facebook page or something like that. And yeah, speaking of your Facebook page and your YouTube, I put on a comment there. When you're following the dog up, does it keep you out of the rough stuff, especially when we're talking about the kaimais, or that supplejack? And you said that, yeah, it takes you on a surprising journey and links up a whole bunch of areas. If you could talk a little bit more about some of the revelations that you get from following and trusting and having a good relationship with a dog.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the dog does, well, what ends up happening when you're following a deer dog around in the bush, or, you know, you could be hunting, that's why I call them big game indicating dogs, because you can keep it narrow and only hunt deer, or you can keep it narrow and only hunt one species, or you can spread it, you can be hunting pigs, goats, or deer, or tar, or whatever you want. But what happens when you're following a big game indicating dog around in the bush is the dog's following the animals that you're hunting, you know, and dogs can track animals for thousands of meters, you know, kilometers and kilometers, up to, you know, days after they've walked through. So, and then dogs can also wind where an animal has walked, you know, up to a day ago as well. So whereas when you haven't got the dog, you're sort of walking around, you know, especially if you're not hugely experienced, you're sort of groping your way around trying to work it all out, and it's all confusing, and you'll see a mark here and a mark there. You might try to follow it, but it's very easy to lose it. You're just sort of feeling your way around, you know. But when you start following a dog may wind where an animal's been 100 or 200 meters away and take you to that, and then put its nose down and start tracking. And then now you're following a deer. You're getting the guided tour through the bush from the animal that you're hunting, you know.
Mm.
And it can be, it always has been for me, very interesting following a dog as it tracks animals. And you think you know where the animal's going to go, and you think, oh, it's just going to, this deer we track is probably going to go down this nice ridge and down to that nice clearing I know about in the creek or something. But all of a sudden it's turning off, and it's going through a bit of a crappy tunnel down through the crap towards a steep face, and you're thinking, you know, that face just looks like crap from when I look up at it from the creek. But next thing you're on a nice sidle track, and next thing you're siding through nice head guts or a nice face, or you're at a series of wallows or clearings or a bedding area, or you find then you start linking areas up. So then you go from the nice ridge you're on through into some nice areas on that face that you never would have known was there, and all of a sudden you're on the next spur around that you've been on, and you just start linking areas up, you know. And I've got my GPS running the whole time, marking stuff, and I just get to know my areas like that, just following the dog as they follow the animals.
Yeah, and does it also, you know, before you go to an area, you get out satellite images, you get out topo maps, and you know, you think, oh, this is going to be shit hot. Does having a dog take you through there more often than not rule out an area, or is your instinct still pretty good?
Yeah, it's a combination of both, and you do get pretty good at knowing where the animals are going to be, to a degree. You know, I'm not saying like you get to the point where you look at a map and go, I know the deer are going to be there, and there. But depending on what you're hunting, you know, goats are a classic for that. We'd actually get given a topo map of the block that we were to hunt, and you could basically look at the map and just find the steepest, crappiest part and go there, and you could be pretty sure that that's where the goats were going to be. You know, they like steep stuff and bluffs and that. And the deer tend to like the well, as a very general rule, tend to like the easier stuff. If you're looking at a real steep, crappy block, I'd be looking at the you know, nicer slopes and faces and head guts where it's bowling out a little bit and the contour lines are spread out a bit more, and there's some nicer, flatter stuff. But again, that's a huge generalization. And then rooster are a bit more like goats, aim for the steep, scrubby crap. You know, and then you get to know what a map is telling you in different areas too. You know, like I'd say the Uawaras, for example, which is somewhere I've spent like over 1,000 days and nights hunting, living and hunting and trapping. You get to know it, so you get to know what the contour lines and what different things that I'm looking at on a map are actually going to mean in real life when I get there on the ground. And I could look at a nice ridge and think, well, in the Uawaras, that's going to be nice. A nice high ridge like that would be a nice open podocarp ridge. But then somewhere in, well, let's say in the Whakatane River watershed, but then over the other side of the Uawaras where it's higher and a ridge top that looks what would be good in the Whakatane River, right over the other side might be steep, bony, wind blowing crap up there, and you want to be down in the river, you know. So you do get to know it for sure, and you can plan your hunts and know what you get into from the map for sure.
Nice, man. So where did the decision, you know, you said you found out about Facebook ads, you're running ads in the NZ Hunter. Where did the decision come to put a video to this? Because I think the biggest like capturing moment for me was when you had that circle of 5 or 6 dogs you went over to the opposite side of the circle, picked one up, walked it back over. Everybody else stayed sitting. Like, it was perfection in terms of dog work. You know, where was the idea to put some of this stuff together that, you know, and you know, you could be forgiven for giving treat training and puppy preschool a hard time, but because you just don't see that sort of characteristic in dogs. Where was the idea to put it all onto video and put out what you've learned and what you've known and what you've implemented?
I've mucked around with video for years. I've always been interested in photography and video, and I used to muck around like with handy cams, and I spent heaps on a computer way back in the day filming motocross, you know. So I've always been interested in video, and as far as the deer dog training blueprint and putting it all in a video series, I can't remember exactly where that started. I sort of had the idea. Yeah, I honestly can't remember exactly where it started, but I know I had the idea for a long time. Yeah, and it was just something I sort of thought about, thought, man, that'd be a really good way to do it. Yeah, just film the whole thing from start to finish and just don't leave anything out. Just put it all in there, you know. Probably actually a big part of it was from writing articles and NZ Hunter, and Greg, the editor, you know, used to say, you know, try to keep everything nice and short. You know, people don't want, you know, you don't want to go over 2,000 words, and a 2-part series is really good. If you start going over 2 or 3 parts, then you're going to start losing people's interest and all of that. And so I used to do a lot of 1 and 2 part series and keep them all under 2,000 words. And I actually talked to Greg on the phone before I started writing that series about training fly, which was my last deer dog training series I wrote. And I said, man, I could just write about this thing forever, you know. And I said, I've got this system that I put together for myself to train my own dogs, and it's worked bloody good with this dog, and I could just start writing about it and go forever. And he said, oh, no, keep, you know, you see, he gave me that, you know, no, keep it below 2 or 3. If you go over that, I said, okay. So I started writing that series fast, you know, like I had to break it down into, try to cut it in half, really, 2 or 3 blocks. And then I wrote the first 2 parts, and then Greg said, I think it must have been quite popular. They were getting good feedback on it, or something. A couple of people said to me that people were really liking it. And Greg emailed me, said, do whatever you want with it. But I'd already made the first couple real quick. So that ended up being a 5-part series. And it was, and I was active on the forums and stuff too. So I was actually getting feedback from people and talking to people. And that style of putting the information out there was creating more questions than what it was answering. You know, it was people were getting really interested in it. People wanted to do it. People were starting to do it, but they still had all these questions, you know. And that's what really gave me the idea of, and it's, you know, writing about something like text is great, and books are great, and reading's awesome, photos are great, but I just wanted to actually show exactly what was happening. You know, like video's a great tool if they can actually see it. The timing, the movement, the expression of the dog, exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, so I just come up with the idea. I just wanted to just show absolutely everything I did to train one of my dogs.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Interesting to say that, like the evolution even of NZ Hunter now, it's what, I don't know, 4 seasons in now to being something extra special. And I heard, what's Junior Dooley's name? Willie. Yeah, talking with educated hunter guys, and you know, he did bring up the fact that they did their season, and at the same time, Hunters Club came out, and he said on the podcast, don't go back and watch season 1 because we feel pretty ashamed at the quality of it and stuff. And you know, that's exactly right. They're now getting the message of the magazine out to everybody in little, you know, hour on TV, but 40-minute episodes, and I'm sure they're opening up the eyes of many people. And do you think that's what you've found as well? You've managed to reach and open up and connect to a wider audience by having that ability to communicate, like say, real-time action, expression, everything across the board?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's true what you say about NZ Hunter, and they've done an awesome job, man. Like their whole thing, their magazine. I think it's the best hunting magazine in New Zealand, and their show. It's crazy, man. It is awesome what those guys have done with the show. And it's interesting what you say about that they look back at their old stuff and cringe now. You said something about don't go and watch Alpha, is season 1. I think that's just a sign of, I think that's a good thing. I think I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, actually watching it on YouTube, and I can't remember who he was talking to. He was talking to one of his mates who's, one of the better comedians in the world. And they're all saying about how, as soon as they've finished something, they hate it.
Mm-hmm.
You work on it, you put everything you can into it. As soon as you've done, you look back at everything that you've learned in making it. You just know all that now from doing it, but you've got this thing that you just made. If you've done a good job, everyone's going to love it, but you hate it and you've got to make another one, and that's just the creative's journey. But yeah, I mean, video, I love video. It's my favorite platform. I even love podcasts. That's why I wanted to do my podcast with good, proper video. Audio is great too. I listen to the audio of podcasts a lot, but it's, I mean, because you can to read a book, you have to sit down and lock right, and you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So audio is great for that. It's passive consumption. You can be consuming, information while you're doing something else. But then video, you're watching as well, and so it's far more engaging. It's a lot richer, you're seeing it and hearing it and experiencing the whole thing, So, and yeah, I think it's just been huge. It's been huge, man. And like writing for the magazine, writing for NZ Hunter was really important for me. It was great. It was it got me off to an awesome start. I wrote my book as well. But yeah, taking that step into video and the internet, and the whole picture, I've always been big on that, trying to do everything. So we've got the photos and the short posts with a little bit of writing on Facebook, and we've always had longer form video. Now Instagram, we've been hitting that pretty hard, and that's super quick, bite-sized platform and format. And now we've got the podcast too, which is, I do a few different podcasts, but also do the big 2-hour Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&As, and they're on YouTube in video format and in audio format. So the whole thing all put together creates a really powerful sort of a machine, eh?
Yeah, man. And you mentioned the book, Hunting Lucky. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
What was the process like for that? Obviously, you were well practiced in writing articles. What's it like to put it into, again, go and snip it bite-sized, slightly longer, and then into a true long-form format of writing? What was that like? Was that something like the blueprint that wrote itself, your life's experiences, or did it take a little bit of work?
All the stuff I do takes heaps of work. None of it comes that easy for me. It starts easy, and I charge into stuff full on, but it's finishing stuff that's really hard. But the book is actually what started the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So I was just trapping possums, and that was it. And I somehow come up with the idea to write a book, because when I was living in the Uawera, so the trapping from the bushy to the Climbwise turned into, I sort of run out of possums there. I trapped out all those farms over a few years, and possums were getting harder and harder to come by. And a guy that I sold fur to, Bruce Dawson from Whakatane, I said to him, man, I'm running out of possums here. And he was like, no, you'll be right. Just keep going, go get some more farms and that. But I really did run out. And I said to him, I'm going to have to stop trapping possums and get a different job. And he said, all right then, I got some blocks I'll take you to in the Uaweras. And that was up the Whakatane River. So I started doing that and really enjoyed that. That was living in there, trapping possums and shooting deer for meat, because I was going in there for a few weeks at a time, and just an incredible place. And so I was doing these big, 4 to 6 to 8 week stints, staying in there on my own, trapping possums. And I was reading books, and I used to read. I started off reading pretty keen when I was about probably 13 or 14. Started reading hunting books and read all the classic stuff, Barry Crump and Kim Swan and Brian Burden and Ewan McConaughey, and the list goes, Rex Forrester, I was always into that. Yeah, I was always into that real classic style of Kiwi sort of outdoor hunting yarns. And I found myself living in there doing it, and I was sort of in there doing it to make money so I could go out and ride my dirt bike. But I sort of accidentally found myself in there doing, kind of in a way, it sounds a bit cheesy to say it, but sort of accidentally living out one of my dreams that I had as a kid, which was to live in the bush, and just sort of stumbled into it. And then, yes, I decided to write a book about my experience in there. And it was actually, so that was all it was going to be. I was going to write that book while I was living in there. I planned it to take about a year. And I thought, while I wrote that book, which is going to take a year, I'll write for a hunting magazine just for a year, get a few articles in so people knew my name. So when the book come out, I'd have that little platform there. And it took 5 years to write the book. And I wrote for NZ Hunter that whole time, and accidentally started Big Game Indicating Dogs at the same time. And the book come out, after the blueprint.
Yeah, nice. And I need to get my hands on it. Where do people find it? Because I need to find it. Just online.
Yep. So huntinglucky.co.nz, and we ship to most places, ship sort of worldwide. It's also on biggameindicatingdogs.com, and Hunting Lucky's got its own Facebook and Instagram too, with quite a few posts and different stuff.
Nice, man. So, is your relationship still good with the fellas at NZ Hunters? I think they need to get, not that they probably listen to this, but I think they need to get a indicating dog episode out there, especially in the Kaimais. That place is horrible.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's still good. We've never had any fallout with those guys. I just stopped writing. Yeah, just got really busy, and the sort of the payoff of I literally just got so busy, and it was I could either not make a video, or the blueprint was going to be later this month, or write an article. So it was just a real priorities thing. And a bit of burnout too. I've been writing for them for 5 years, and had written the book and then making the blueprint as well. And there's a lot of writing in the blueprint. I do a lot of writing and scripting and stuff, and do so much, man.
Absolutely, man. So one question, going back to the start, you go on a big road trip. What's on Paul Michael's playlist as you head down the country over the ferry and down the country even further?
It's a huge, wide range of stuff from, from Dire Straits to gangster rap, man, and anything in between. Yeah, really is, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, and so did you have controls of the stereo, or did you push in for that?
We're actually talking about that on the way back, because we had we cranked the sounds from Wellington back up So sort of the last, we didn't crank the sounds that much. We listened to a couple of podcasts, but we just did a lot of just quiet driving too, and just talking, and yeah, but bit of both, yeah. My mate DJ'd up for a bit on the way home, and with a few suggestions from me.
Fantastic. So what sort of planning for you, like you say, most of the time you're flatland hunting up in the North Island, is that sort of day trip or weekend stuff, or do you do a few expeditions up here as well, or and then what sort of planning for you does it take to, drive nearly the length of the country to no man's land on the west coast?
Yeah, so up here it's a real variation, from day hunts, even 2 or 3 hour hunt in the Kindwise and some handy spots, to overnighters, to multi-day walk-ins, to fly-in trips and stuff like that in the North Island. As far as working at the South Island, that's been something that's been more of a long-term thing for me. I first hunted in the South Island. First actually hunt down there, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, was Stewart Island, which is a bit of a random hunt with another guy, and he took me down there, and we hooked up with some guys that go there all the time from Alexandria, and we went to Stewart Island. But as far as like the hunts we're doing now, this last hunt was a ballot block, was an invite. You want to come on a tar ballot, and I said yes. But I've been slowly piecing together the South Island for the last couple of years, and it sort of started with just road trips. I did it one Christmas and just started, actually first starts with WAMS, the Walking Access Maps website and Google Earth, and just piecing it together. And from just reading New Zealand hunting books and magazines and watching YouTube videos and just having a feel for where I want to start going. And then it goes to WAMS and the DOC website, working out regulations and access points and where I can take dogs, and where you can get in and what you're allowed to do. And then and the next step was it was a first big road trip. Didn't even really hunt, just drove around and drove to road ends, and okay, that is where the car park is, and you can walk in there in the sign, you know what I mean? And because it's a big call to go from reading the website to driving all the way down there and going straight in. And then just slowly started doing some hunts, did a bit of a raw trip. And I'm slowly piecing it together, man. I've got a few spots down there. And a big thing for me too is safety, and not going charging on in like a hero and ending up with the truck stuck in a river in Otago, or getting screwed over in the snow somewhere. Or just I'd rather ease into it and take my time and piece it together and get better and better over the next 10 years than have a couple of big disasters early on.
No, absolutely. I've done 3 walking access hunts around Lake Hawaii now, and I'm quite glad that, hey, it might be no animals or just seeing animals, but walking out again, it's a great feeling. What was the contrast of being flown into the Landsborough, being left behind in such a vast area, and then coming out again? What mentally, physically, what was that like, man?
How do you mean, like getting dropped off in there? You mean coming out or going in, or both?
Both, mate, both. So that moment when it leaves you, and then also when it comes back and drops you back off in civilization. Yeah,
I mean, for the Landsborough trip, other than the spectacular country, there's the first time. Really was. It was the first time for me really being in that magnitude of country, at that height. But then I've also sort of hunted all my life and basically lived and worked in the bush full time for 10 years, and have been been dropped off in the middle of the Uawaras, years ago, and I'm getting dropped off on my own for 8 weeks and watching the helicopter fly away. So the Landsborough trip wasn't too much of a shock to the system, other than the awesome new country to finally be up in their awesome stuff. But yeah, it's definitely, and I write about it in my book, in Hunting Lucky, which is about the time that I spent trapping in the Uaweras, and that was doing, the longest trip I did was 8 weeks on my own. And yeah, it is a heavy feeling when you get dropped off, and because it's all the flight in. Helicopters are real bloody loud, and there's the smell of the fuel and unloading them is all a hurry and all of that, and the whole day and the days leading up to a trip like that is tends to be pretty full on and frantic. You're getting all your gear ready, and you're getting ready to go and drive down there and load the chopper up and unload it, and then the noise of the chopper fades into the distance, and a real heavy silence falls over the whole thing, and that's you're there on your own. And yeah, it's never really been an issue for me. I spend a lot of time on my own growing up and hunting on my own as a kid. So being on my own or out in the outdoor, that's actually probably where I'm most comfortable in a lot of ways. I can get a bit bored there now, but as far as actually being comfortable on my own in the middle of nowhere is probably, yeah, it is very comfortable for me. The Landsborough trip, man, was just excitement. It was just epic because I was 100% confident. It wasn't daunting or anything like that, and it was just we filmed the whole trip actually, so we'll have a video coming up on it. And I actually pulled the GoPro out, and just after the helicopter flew away, and I was like, well, this is us. And I did the big 360, and we're here. We're decked out with all our gears. We've got primo weather, and we're going tar hunting, man. Yeah, it was just awesome, eh?
And getting back to civilization, what's that feeling?
With trapping, it used to be, that was probably the biggest contrast, especially when you've been in there for weeks on end on your own. Actually, I wrote about that in my book too, and I spoke about that in a podcast I did with the guy Shay Williamson, who's a trapper that's done a lot of it on his own. And it is strange coming back. Your perspective's completely different when you've been living in the bush on your own for weeks on end. And I remember a few things. It can be intense the first time coming out into big open space if you've been in a full-on bushed block. And it's different if you're in a block with any sort of types of open tops or big open river valleys. But I did some jobs and some blocks and some creeks. Your block is in the head of a small bush creek in the Uaweras, and the biggest space you're in for weeks on end is only about 5 by 5 meters in a little clearing in the creek. But all the rest of the time you're all around trees and that. And for some reason you don't notice it so much flying out. But I remember walking out from a block, and I come out of Kaitawa up over into Reed Creek and down the Horomanga River, and coming out of the mouth at Reed Creek and out into the big open wide Horomanga River. And it was the first time been in a big open space for 6 weeks. And that was quite intense. And another time I remember flying out, and I can't remember why, but I had to go into the warehouse in Rotorua on my way home. So I'd been in the bush for a few weeks, and the warehouse in Rotorua is in the big plaza. So you're walking through the food hall. And walking in there after being on my own in the bush for 6 weeks. And you know what a food hall's like, packed out on a weekend, and there's hundreds of people in there and all the voices are echoing and everything. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, speak about food halls. What's it like being self-sufficient? What's your relationship like with food? Does it become something that you do as a necessity? And obviously, what are you eating? Like you say, you shoot the odd deer for meat. How does your body composition change? And how often do you eat? What sort of goes on when you're in the bush like that, and you're the person that's got to feed yourself? What's it like?
Well, my diet's a lot different now to what it was when I was trapping, and I actually, my diet, a lot of people would have said my diet was okay, but I'm actually I'm actually don't eat gluten or dairy now.
Mm.
And in hindsight, I've always been sensitive to it. And then, so when I was living in the bush, I was having, early on, I was having maybe porridge for breakfast with milk powder, and then muesli bars all day, and then noodles when I get back, and camp oven bread, and like pasta snacks with my venison. And I was basically living on venison, gluten, dairy, preservatives, white bread, canned food, all just processed shit.
Apart from the venison.
Apart from the venison, man. Yeah, and I'd have potatoes and stuff like that, and used to take veggies in, but they'd only last so long. I used to actually take in a whole cabbage and like sit it in a little thing of water, and you could like peel the leaves off the outside and make a cabbage last a while, get into a bit of watercress and stuff like that. So I was actually eating a bit of good stuff, but I actually screwed my body up quite a bit, eating a diet that was no good for me, and while working really hard at the same time, like really physically hard. And then also had some injuries from motocross.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, I had injuries from that, and then I was taking painkillers, which was screwing up my body as well, my digestive system. And I actually ended up pretty screwed up, man, about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's how I ended up on Elliot Hulse, on watching his stuff. And then that sort of fed into all sorts of other stuff. So now I eat no gluten, no dairy. Over the last few years, I've gone through periods of sort of 8 or 10 months of eating, drinking no alcohol, eating zero sugar, eating a lot of organic food, no processed food, eating real super clean. And yeah, which has been a huge difference for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of think about my hip and what was going on there. Why do I get this hip problem? And now I've got a knee issue, and I just sort of think back to doing sport, like you say, being in the bush, going hard, training hard. Same was doing sport, but then just plowing back things like Powerade. By the time I got to uni, I was drinking, eating tons of Wheat Bix, and again, I'm hopeless with gluten, and because of that gluten, so much gluten, his gut was holes all through it. Had a period of dairy intolerance as well. I'm over that now, thankfully, but it's one more food group that you can hang on to, especially when it comes to the fats like butter and cheese. But yeah, I know what you mean. You sort of look back in hindsight and you think about those little times you had niggles and those sort of major things that stick with you, sort of the scars of the experience, I guess. And you go, man, wish I knew what I knew now. But then again, that's the journey in life, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I look back at even when I was riding freestyle motocross, and even the mental side and the health and fitness and the nutrition and just just knowledge in general, man, and just think how I have no idea how I did what I did, the way I was doing it, and yeah, I mean, and it's like the wonder of the internet, all this stuff for me. Almost everything I do today is all come from learning of people on the internet. My health and my whole life actually at one point there was pretty screwed up, because I did the trapping, and then that was sort of running up, but then my health was really breaking down, and then my health was affecting the way I could work, or it was meaning I couldn't work the way I needed to make money. So then I was going broke, so then that affects, your personal life and your social life and everything. And then your overall happiness and everything was bloody down in the dumps. And it really was just that whole idea of people sharing information on the internet, man, and like what Elliot Hulse was doing, and that whole idea of basically just being, he'd worked out a lot about life, and he had his core thing that he was good at, which is strength and conditioning and philosophy and understanding all that stuff and sharing that. That helped me a lot. I think that's why I'm driven now to that was definitely a big spark for the Deer Dog Training Blueprint and sharing that, and now with the podcast, and then doing things like this podcast with you, and a couple of podcasts that I've done on my podcast that aren't nothing to do with hunting, and I want to do more of that sort of stuff. But it's just the internet is an amazing thing, just a way of sharing information and everyone becoming better people,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like, I was in my final year of uni, and hey, I was about to finish this lifelong goal of becoming an optometrist, but everywhere else in my life, I was just coming up with barriers, doing stupid things, stuff not working out. And I don't know about you, but I'm a real perfectionist. And so when things don't go how this amazing plan is in my head, I didn't know where the hell my head was. And finding people like Elliot Hulse that just unravel it all, and another person that I'd have a massive shout out to around the same time was Keegan Smith. I saw him training Sonny Bill Williams and taking the Roosters to new things, and starting to, I think even back then he was introducing juggling and handstands and fasting and getting away from processed food. And he's talking about how for rugby league we shouldn't be pushing alcohol, we shouldn't be pushing these sugar drinks. Now he's getting to the point where, hey, rugby league in Australia's got gambling and the downstream effects of that, and the mental health of rugby league players. And just, again, talk about life journeys and sharing information. That's the positive of the internet and social media. But I put up a post the other day. You got to curate that. So what my question is out of all of that is, when you come out of such a shit environment, and like you said, you're quite happy for long periods of time spending time on your own. How did you sort of reach out or find branches to bring it all back in together, and where'd the support come in?
Man, for me, it was just a real personal journey that I did all on my own, man.
Yeah.
So for me, there was no real reaching out. There was no pulling people in to do it. It was just something that was done all on my own. And just watching a lot of videos, man, consuming a lot of content, pushing away all negative influences, cutting a lot of people off, and just getting real serious about it, man. I really did, and that's something I'm still pretty full on with to this day, I think the people that you hang around, the people that you have in your life is really important. And the people that are around you are super important. And so that's what I did. I just pushed away all negative influences and focused on the positive and what I could do to sort it out, and it all just happened from there. And then you sort of attract the people and the things and circumstances to you that you need to keep going, but it all starts with yourself, man. That's yeah.
And I think that's exactly an example right there. What you're talking about is those 5 people in your life that you surround yourself with, that you become a part of, or become part of you. They don't have to be physically there. And again, positives of social media and the internet is that you can find an influence for anything, anywhere, and that's probably works both in a negative way, and unfortunately this country right now is no stranger to that. But you know, you can find 5 amazing people and see how they live their life, and you know, follow The Rock, follow Elliot Hulse, follow Joe Rogan, follow Cameron Haynes, and shit. There's an awesome list of people that are out there doing their own thing, not giving a shit about what anybody thinks, and getting after it, and just creating an awesome life.
100%, man. You can do it all on your own. Yeah, just if you know, I think it's pretty hard to have excuses these days. You know, if you're in a country where you've got access to the internet, and if you're not seriously mentally or physically disabled, and you have access to the internet, you've really got a huge amount of tools at your disposal to do whatever you want, you know. And you can, talking about that, you saying you don't have to be around those 5 people. You don't have to, even if you don't know 5 good people, you know, even if your situation is that bad, that, you know, people say you're a sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I believe that you don't even actually have to be physically with them. Just bombard yourself with, you know, that sort of positive stuff that you're interested in. That was actually an idea. But Elliot Hulse did a video on that, and he spoke about how are you brainwashing yourself, because, you know, everything you think about. Well, then we get to, you know, the idea. Follow Bob Proctor's stuff at all?
Only through Keegan Smith. He's a big Bob Proctor fan, and he's even been and done some courses with him.
Yeah. Okay. So he talks about the paradigm, and the paradigm is, you know, your sort of subconscious, just all your subconscious stuff, all your subconscious programming, and how most of your thoughts and ideas and actions and results all come from your subconscious. And your subconscious is programmed by everything that comes in, everything that your workmate says to you, or everything that person that you don't even like, that you have to work by next to all day, that just talks shit and complains, and or a friend that is constantly passive aggressive, giving a shit, or your parents, or whoever it is, whatever. If it's positive, that's awesome. But everything going in, the TV you watch, the news you watch, if you're watching, you can watch plenty of bullshit videos on YouTube as well, but everything that's going in is going in, and it's all programming you. And you know, when you wake up the next day, you have ideas and thoughts and actions that are in alignment with that, you know. So for me, when I started changing what I was doing, I was just bombarding myself with positive stuff. And getting away from that negative complaining, negative mindset, and just watching positive stuff. And podcasts are great for that. Listen to people that are doing good things and doing the types of things that you want to do, and just brainwash yourself with it, and you just start waking up in the morning with new ideas and starting to do new things, you know.
On the flip side to that, how do you sort of, like, you know, being involved with the hunting community, there's a lot of conjecture to that. How do you sort of, and there's a thought out there that you should expose yourself to counter opinions so that you can be more sure in what you stand for. And if something changes your mind, well, then you've got a more open opinion. How do you sort of frame that? And do you get much pushback in what you're doing? One is in your dog training method, and two, as a hunter.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it is important. So you're saying,
like if you can construct a good argument, and the more you have to sort of communicate your position in life, the more sure you are in the position in your life, I guess what it is. And
yep. So you're saying basically understanding the opposition's viewpoints.
Yeah.
So you're understanding both sides of it, and you're not just shutting everyone out and saying this is.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's hugely, hugely important.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Do you get much pushback
against what, my dog training or?
Yeah, dog training and anything to do with the hunting that you put out there.
Oh yeah, we've had all sorts of crazy stuff over the years, you know, and I think anyone that puts out a good message, you know, puts out a whole heap of stuff on social media, has got something to say. You're going to have people disagreeing and stuff like that, and yeah, we've had people disagree with what I'm doing, and for sure in opposition. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I've changed my mind on a lot of things over the years too, and changed the way I present information, or just let things go, or haven't focused on certain things as much as I have in the past. Yeah. And it is. It's a really good point. It's very important to always be thinking of different perspectives and taking them into account, researching them, studying them, trying them out, to considering them, and go from there.
Nice. I like that. One thing, you know, I spent the last year in Australia. One thing that I noticed, and it was good having heard your background and what you think about dogs, particularly in terms of dogs off leash on the beach. The beach we were on was supposed to be a leash beach, but mate, they were always off leash. But something about in Australia, the dogs there were awesome. Even to the point, I was talking with somebody at work today about what do you do in New Zealand when a Staffordshire Terrier comes up to you? You immediately feel a little bit nervous. Over there, man, that I don't know whether it's the type of bloodlines we've got here in New Zealand, but most Staffordshire Terriers over there were incredible, and with the a little bit of apprehension, we felt awesome about our one-year-old daughter playing with the Staffordshire Terrier. What do you have any idea why New Zealand dogs just are useless? Like coming back down to Tomato Peak the other day, something that you immediately came to mind, the little terrier, not a Staffordshire Terrier, but a little shaggy thing, was on a long lead. She was walking on the left of the path that was out on the right, and every dog that was coming up the hill was getting a row to it. And I was thinking, God, pull that dog and get it on the left, and it'll feel protected from you and not protecting you. And this lady kept going, oh, sorry. You know, are we just uneducated? Is it too easy to get a dog? Are we not spending enough time with our dogs? Like in Australia, everyone's out all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a pretty relaxed attitude towards dogs in general. The old Kiwi sort of do it yourself, she'll be right type of attitude. I think we're catching up too, but if you're right into dogs, and you know, I remember people saying it on the forums years ago, the New Zealand hunting forums, in the dog section, that you know, the people that were into dog trialing and had maybe been overseas or been involved with people and trainers that had trained overseas, or overseas trainers that came to New Zealand and saw where New Zealand was at as a whole with dogs. It was the general idea was that New Zealand was quite far behind. Yeah, quite far behind a lot of the rest of the world. Yeah, which is probably true. You know, I'm not sure, but then I think we're catching up too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not too sure about Australia, but I know, you know, in England and Europe, especially in the hunting dogs and bird dogs and gun dogs, you know, they've been right into their training for a very long time. Whereas New Zealand, we just sort of, just get a get a lab and go and shoot some ducks, mate. Should be right, you know.
It might bring him back.
Yeah. And that's something we had a lot of talking about, sort of people disagreeing and backlash. One of the first things, you know, the first obstacles we had to overcome was people saying, you know, we were saying, oh, here's this dog training system. And a lot of people, when it first came out, were saying, what the hell are you talking about? You know, you don't need to train a dog, sort of thing. That was very common. Yeah.
Mate, is that partly why you chose a heading dog? Because it's this proven great bloodline for tracking things and I guess they chase sort of, but yeah, they do it meticulously. Is that why you thought that that'd make a good, well-controlled, well-pressured dog?
Heading dogs are easy to train. You know, they're very trainable, very biddable, and they're very good at big game indicating too. So, yeah, and that's something I got up from the professional hunters, you know, the goat guys that I worked with. They were using heading dogs, and I really liked them. I've always liked heading dogs and farm dogs. You know, they're super sensible, smart, biddable, and they're good at it too. They're really keen on hunting anything with a hoof. Yeah, they do it bloody well.
Yeah, and that was probably something you changed your mind on, was the sort of traditional hunting dogs of GSPs and Vizslers. You sort of thought that maybe they'd be a bit, I don't know, too dependable, but I think you made a video that this works just as well and I'm getting plenty of good results. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I was a bit of I have been a critic of some of the breeds in the past, and that definitely caused a bit of a sting. Well, not a critic saying that certain breeds are no good and no one should ever have one. I was just being really honest about my experiences and the things that I learned about them. And I remember I made a post years ago on the forum basically just talking about, I wanted to get a Vizsla back in the day, and I spoke about my experiences and everything that I learned in the process of trying to choose one to get, you know. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that sparked off a whole thing, and you know, it still is more difficult, man. Like, you know, a lot of German Shorty pointers and Vizslers do take longer. You know, they take more work and they take longer. And in some of the lines and some of the litters and that, you know, there could be problems with them. Whereas working dogs, heading dogs, they tend to be really bloody good. You know, there hasn't been any show line. Only usefulness, not on fitting into a certain shape or color or size. Mm-hmm. But it look, you know, like you can still do it, but it just might take longer. And yeah, GSPs and Vizslers do. I've got a Vizsla cross now that I've made the Palmico dog guide with. And you get to the same place, but it can take longer, you know.
Yeah, I mean, is that where you're better off with a bit of cross rather than going that pedigree route?
Not necessarily, nah. And you know, I'll be just as if I wanted to get something with Vizsla or GSP in it, I'd be just as inclined to get a purebred. Perhaps even more inclined to get a purebred than a cross. Some crosses, like people, there's quite a few crosses out there now, particularly with heading dog in them. Mm-hmm. For deer, you know, like Vizsla cross heading dog or GSP heading dog cross, and people think, some people may think that GSPs, they really like them, but they can be a bit highly strung, so I'll cross, and heading dogs are calmer, so I'll cross a heading dog over a GSP to end up with a bit more of a calmer GSP, but it doesn't always work like that. You know, it's crossing dogs is a bit like mixing chemicals. You know, if you it is, man, and you add two together and it doesn't make a slightly, you know, a version of one chemical slightly mixed with the other, it creates a whole new thing, you know. And yeah, heading dog Vizsla has actually been quite a popular cross, with the idea of maybe having a more easy to train, calmer version of a Vizsla. But I've seen quite a few heading dog. Well, I own a heading dog Vizsla cross, and she's very intense, you know. And I've seen a few, and I think a lot of them tend to be even more intense than a purebred Vizsla. You kind of get the you get all the cool stuff from the Vizsla too, you know, short coat and real point and sneak and an awesome nose, and you know, there's loads of awesome stuff there. Same in the GSP, you know, awesome dogs, incredible hunters, massive amounts of drive. They're really, really cool. But then they are really driven, very strong mindset, very strong, you know, tough-headed, really intense, loads of drive, slow and maturing. And then in the heading dogs have a huge amount of drive too, you know, but in a purebred heading dog, that's sort of coupled with a lot of sensibility and fast maturing and very, very smart and very, very biddable. But when you combine the two, you're adding that heading dog to a Vizsla is almost intensifying a lot of those things that are harder to deal with, you know. So it's not as straightforward as just, I will just tone down a Vizsla with a bit of heading dog. It doesn't always work like that.
Instead, you know, with overdrive.
Yeah. A really hard working Vizsla.
You want to be fit.
Yeah.
Mate, we've unpacked heaps, and this is why I was super keen to come on. And I've just had word that my mate's beach house up in Tauranga can't be far away, so hopefully I'm up that way soon and can come visit you in Papamoa, and we can do this the other way. But where do people find you? I'll keep searching Paul Michael's links and have them in the show notes. But where's the main spots to get in touch with you, brother?
Main spots would be well, for the deer dog stuff, biggameindicatingdogs.com and Big Game Indicating Dogs on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. General dog training stuff is Palmico Dog Training on Facebook and Instagram. And then there's also the Paul Michaels Revolution podcast, which is on Facebook, YouTube, and all the podcast apps. And we have a lot of Big Game Indicating Dog stuff on there as well, and also Paul Michaels Rev on Instagram.
Wicked. Mate, I think you've got a new customer for Palmico, a Australian cattle dog that won't stop jumping up, especially when there's a ball around.
Oh, yeah.
Mate, we always get people to leave us with something, whether that's a question, a thought, or something they live their life by. Way you go, man. Let's hear it.
Oh, man. I just live my life by trying to become the best person that I can while I'm here and try to leave the world in the best shape for me being here when I leave.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. And we'll have to do the reverse, hopefully, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, man, we will. Keen.
Cheers. Wicked.
Sweet. See you later.